able to hear? Yes. Now can you hear my voice, right? Now is okay? Hello? Okay. So there is a class. Okay. So there is a class called so there is a class called address. So if you see this address class, so what address is having? So what address is having is, so it is having some properties like street. So there is one more property called city. So address is a class, and this address is having how many properties? Two properties are there. One is a street, and there's one more property called which one? City. One is a street, and one more is what here? City. So you are trying to read the address by using read address. So read address is one method. Now using this, you are trying to read the address. So input, I'm saying enter street. Okay, self dot city. So I make the street and city as a private. Okay. I make the street and city as a private. So here I'm saying input, enter city. So there is another method called print address. This will print the address. So which is having a street. Okay, self dot street. And I'm trying to print the city. Okay, where I said self dot city. Okay, so this represent address. Okay, so if you want to represent address of a person, you are representing an address by using which class here? Address class. You are representing an address using address. So there is a class. What is this class here? Person. So person is another class. What is this class here? Person. So what person is having? So what person is having is, person is having name. Person is having name, and person also has what? Address. So here, person is having a name. Person is having what here? Name. And person also have what here? Address. So person is having how many addresses? So there is address 1. Okay, there is address 1. And there is address 2. So one person has how many addresses? 2 addresses. So that is called one to many. So inside this person, I created how many objects? 2 objects. Okay, so one person has how many addresses? 2 addresses. Okay, so this association you can call it as one to many. This association is called one to many, right? This particular association is called one to many. So there is a method called read. So there is a method called read. So this method will read the name of the person. So input, you are saying enter name. So enter the name of the person. So enter the name of the person. And you are trying to read address one dot. ఈ ఫ్యాన్ ఎక్కడే ఫ్యాన్ ఇది what is it another property address 2 and this is having address of one more address. So it means the person one has a name, has address 1 as well as what address 2. Okay, so one person is having how many address objects? Two address objects. So this association you call it as one to many. So this is how you are trying to use the content of one class inside what another class. So this you can call it as what composition. Okay, so here so print person. So where I'm trying to print name of the person. Okay, self dot name and then I'll try to say self dot address one dot print address. Okay, self dot address two dot I called which method? Print address. Because the data of the address is private. When the data is a private, you access it with the help of public methods. So read address is a public method and print address is also public. So read address is a public method and print address is also what here? Public method. Read address is a public and print address is also public. So person one, I create person one dot read. I said person one dot print person. Person one dot read and person one dot print person. So read method of person. Okay, read method of person. So you are trying to do like this. Okay. Now once you run this, see this is it means whenever you develop a project, right? In project development, you never write everything inside one class. You try to divide. Suppose this is a name and this is a street and this is a city. Okay, this is a street and this is what again? City. Now you can see the name of the person and street and one more is what? City. But here this association, you call it as what? One to many. So this association is called as one to many. Okay, so here this is how it is. So it means one object is referring to more than one object is referring to more than one object. One object is referring to what here? More than one object. That is called as one to many. One object is referring to more than one object. Which class? Right, but there is a so there is one more association. So that is called as many to one. There's one more association called many to one. So here many objects refers to how many objects? One object. So many objects refers to how many objects here? One objects. So that you can call it as many to one. Suppose many to one means suppose assume that there is a class. Assume that there is a class called printer. Printer is there. So the job of printer is what? Printing data. So printer is having one method called print data. So it will receive the data and print it. It will receive the data and what it will do? Print it. So it will receive the data and print. So it's a local, right? So there is a printer and there is other classes. There is other classes. There is a class called notepad. So there is a printer and there's one more class which is called notepad. So your printer is one class and notepad is what? Another class. For example, so I try to open number of notepads. Assume that this is notepad 1. Okay, I'll try to open. I'll try to create another notepad. This is notepad 2. How many notepad objects I created? 2. But when I say file print here, file print here, is it each notepad uses one printer or all notepads uses only one printer? All notepads uses only one printer. So many notepad objects are sharing how many printers here? Only one. So that association is what? Many to one. For example, notepad is there. So whenever I create a notepad with some text. So within the notepad, I try to type what here? Text. And I want to print this text. I want to print this text. Where? On a printer. Then I have to create which object here? Printer object. Inside which object? Notepad object. But for each notepad, you create one printer or all notepads only one printer. All notepads only one printer. Suppose if I'm creating it as a object level, then for each notepad, it will create one printer. Because whenever I create a notepad, it will create a text along with the printer. But for each notepad, I don't want. Create one printer. Then I declare this printer at which level? Class level. So if I write at class level, how many times memory for this is allocated? Only one time. Now that is shared by how many notepads here? Number of notepads. That is shared by how many notepads here? Number of notepads. So where I'm saying notepad dot, so printer dot print dot data, and this is a data you are printing. So what will happen? I create notepad 1. So I create notepad 1 with some text. So this is notepad. This is notepad 1. I create notepad 2 with some text. This is notepad. This is notepad what here? 2. So how many objects I created? 2 notepad objects I create. So this is a notepad 1 and this is what here? Notepad 2. So notepad 1 is nothing but N1. Notepad 2 is nothing but what here? N2. Notepad 1 is N1 and notepad 2 is what here? N2. Then there is also, now whenever I create a notepad, so it is having a property called text. Okay, now this is notepad 1. So it is having a property called text. This is, what is this? This is, okay, this is notepad 2. So this both the notepad objects share one printer objects here. This both the notepad objects share how many printer objects? Only one printer. Now if I'm saying notepad 1 dot print text, so it will call print text method which hold the address of notepad 1, which hold address of notepad 1. Then you are saying notepad dot p. Now p is referring to which object? Printer object. So how many printer objects? Only one printer. Print data and it will print the text of notepad 1. Okay, if I'm saying n2 dot, if I'm saying n2 dot print text, I said n1 dot print text. I said here n2 dot print text. So it will call print text. And this time it hold the address of what? Notepad 2. And this notepad 2, okay, print text method uses which object here? Printer object. But this is at which level? Printer object is at which level? Class level. So class level means how many times is printer memory allocated? Only one time. And that is used by how many notepads here? Number of notepad objects. Okay. So n1 dot print text, n2 dot print text, n1 dot print text, n2 dot print text. So once you run this, you can see this is notepad 1. This is notepad 1 and this is notepad 2. So this is many to one. So 1 to 1 association can be 1 to 1, 1 to many. Okay, 1 to many and many to 1. Now it can be many to many also. It can be many to many also. Now this is notepad 1. Okay, there is a notepad 1 and this is a notepad 1 and this is a notepad 2. This is a notepad 1 and this is a notepad 2, right? Yes. So this is what will happen when you are working with the composition. So composition is a process of, that is what I said, is a process of creating a reference of one object inside another object. Or one object refers to the members of what? Another object. So that is called as composition. Okay, so there is in composition. So what will happen in composition is, so this is, for example, there is a class A is there. There's a class A and there's a class B. So I want to use the class A inside what? Class B. I want to use the members of class A inside what? Class B. So here, what do you do it? You create object of. So that is what will happen in composition, right? Self dot A equal to A object. So what will happen when I create a B object? So when I create a B object, it will create a B object with a reference of, okay, it will create a B object. It will create B object, okay, which is having the reference of which object? A object, which is, this is what will happen in composition. So here B is called as what? Container. B is a container and A is what here? Contained. Okay, B is a container, but A is what here? Contained object. B is a container and A is what here? Contained. So what will happen when it comes to this? Okay, whenever B object is destroyed, whenever B object is destroyed, what will happen? Is it B object is holding the reference of which object? A object. So whenever B object is destroyed, okay, it also destroys which object? A object. It also destroys which object? A object. But I want, okay, but I want the contained object should exist. I want the contained object should exist independent of which object? Container object. I want the contained object should exist independent of container object. So then you go for another approach called aggregation. Okay. So what is the aggregation in this case is, it is also one type of composition. Aggregation is a one type of, so all these are reusability. So this is how you are trying to use the content of one class inside another class. So aggregation is one type of what? Composition. What is aggregation? Aggregation is one type of composition. What is aggregation is? It is one type of composition. So aggregation is what? Aggregation is one type of composition where. So what will happen in aggregation is. So in aggregation, so contained object. is not created within. So container class. Contained object is not created within contained class, container class. It is sent to container class from outside. Okay, using a constructor or through constructor or through what here method. So in this one, okay, it is sent to container class from outside. Okay, you are not creating it. If you are creating it, what will happen? Whenever container object is destroyed, it also destroys which one? Contained object. But I want the contained object should exist independent of what? Container object. class first floor. First floor. So if you want the contained object should exist independent of which object? Container object. Then you are trying to use what? Aggregation. So if this object is destroyed, it also destroys this object. Because of that, what do you do? You don't create here. What do? You don't create the object here. Okay, but it holds a reference of the object which is sent from outside. Outside means I create object in which class? Main. Okay, I create object in main. So whenever I create a B object, I send the reference of which object? A object. Means what I did, I send only address. I send only what? Address. But actually, who is holding the address of this? Caller. Okay, main or any other function is only. So in that case, if the B object is destroyed, it doesn't destroy which object? A object. Because you have not created A object inside what? B object. You send the address of A object to which object? B object. You send the address of A object to which object? B object. So that is what will happen in aggregation. It is called as object injecting, inversion of controlling. So this concept is used in most of the frameworks. Containers you send it. See, container will execute the programs. Container, suppose if you're talking about Django. So server will run the programs, but how it will run? So the server will create a objects and send it to what? Some containers to execute. So after executing, it means in aggregation, what will happen is you don't create the objects. You send the objects to the container class. But how you send it? By using either constructor, either by using which one? Methods. Okay. So what will happen here is, for example, in aggregation, suppose two classes are there. So there is a class having M1 method. So this is M1 of A class. This is the class A. So class A is having M1 method. Class A is having which method? M1 method. Okay, so there is a class B. There is another class called what here? B. So there is A class. Okay, there is A class and there is B class. So class B want to use A. So here I use a constructor. What I'm using here, constructor, and this constructor receive the reference of which class? A class. But here I have not created object of A class inside what? B class. So then this class B is having M2. M2 method want to call M1 method of what? A. So how you call it? By saying self dot A dot what is that? M1. Because this variable hold the reference of which object? A object. A object? No. You create A object within the caller. Suppose main. Within main, I create object of A class. So where I create object of A class within main. And the reference of this object you are sending to which one? B class. So here I'm saying OBJ. But actually where I created here inside the main, and I inject that object to which one? B. So if B object is destroyed, nothing will happen because who is actually holding the address? Main. So I'll try to say, so here I'll try to display M2 of B class. Now if I'm saying obj B dot M2, obj B dot M2. So once I run this, you can see M1 of A class and M2 of which class? B class. M1 of A class. So it calls the M1 method of which one? A. And it is also using, it's using M1 of A, and it is also having its own functionality. It is also having its own functionality. So it is like this. For example, I'll tell you another one. So this is what will happen in application development, because you never develop application by writing everything inside one class. You try to decompose, means you need to divide and conquer. Means you try to divide the content into number of classes, and when you required, you'll try to use. You'll try to use the content of one class inside what here? Another class. The content of one class inside another class. Suppose, for example, there is a class called department. So what department is having? So department number, department name. So self dot department number equal to D, and self dot department name equal to N. So department is having how many properties? Two properties. So the first one is department number. Second one is department name. So there is a print department details. You can also write getters also. So get department number. So this will return self dot self dot department number. So get department name. So this will return self dot department name. So department is having how many properties here? Two properties. What is the first one here? Department number. And second one is what? Department name. So get a department number that returns the department number of the department. Get department name that returns what? Department name. So there is a class. So there is a class called which one here? Employee. So there is a class called employee. So what employee is having? Employee is having employee number, employee name, and department. So self dot employee number is employee number, employee name equal to N. So department equal to D. Okay. Now print employee details. So here I try to print. So what I'm printing is employee number. I'm printing employee number self dot. So this is employee number. So then I'm trying to print employee name. So self dot employee name. So I try to print department number. So here I'm saying self dot department dot get what is that? Department number. So I call that method. So then department name. So self dot department dot get a department name. So I call those methods. So after that, what I'm doing is, I'm trying to create some department one. Okay, department one equal to department. Department number is 10. Department name is some HR. So then I create employee one. Employee one equal to employee. Employee number is 101. Employee name is what? Naresh. And is working in what department? One. So I can also create another employee. So employee 102 and the name is Suresh. And he's also working in department one. So it means this object is shared by how many objects here? Two objects. So this is again many to one. This is many to one or not? Yes. So but here we are not creating it. We are not creating within container, but we are sending to what here? Container. Okay, so EMP1 dot print employee. EMP2 dot print employee. You are trying to print the details of employee 1. You are trying to print the details of employee 1. You are trying to print the details of employee 1 and employee 2. So once you run this, now this is employee 1, number, okay, name and other things. Okay. So this is what you do in aggregation. So there is an employee number. Okay, so here multi-line, right? So there is an employee number, employee name and salary, right? So in composition, so in composition, so what will happen in composition is, in composition, if container object is destroyed, if container object is destroyed, it also destroys, it also destroy contained object. If contained object should exist independent of container object, we have to use what here, aggregation. Independent of container object, okay, we have to use what here, aggregation. We have to use the aggregation. Okay, so this is one way of using the content of one class inside another class. But here, now this reusability is between unrelated types. But there is one more type of reusability, and that reusability is what here, inheritance. So how many ways can you use the content of one class inside another class? First one is composition, second one is aggregation, third one is what? Inheritance. So inheritance relationship is what? Is a relation. Is a means same type. So definition is very easy. Okay, inheritance is a process of acquiring the properties, and behavior of one class inside another class. Inheritance is a process of acquiring the properties and behavior of one class inside another class. So creating class by deriving the properties or variables and methods of another class. Creating class by deriving variables and methods. Variables and methods of which class? Another class. Creating class by deriving variables and methods of another class. Even that you can call it as what? Inheritance. So, or you can say inheritance is a process of grouping all the classes, we share the common properties and what behavior. So here inheritance relationship is parent and what is that? Child. So child acquires the properties and methods of what? Parent. So child acquires acquires the properties and behavior of which one? Parent. So child acquires the properties and behavior of what? Parent. So inheritance allows to group all the classes which share the common properties and what? Behavior. So inheritance allows you to build similar type classes. Inheritance allows to build okay, similar types of classes. Inheritance. Like for example, if you take some example like suppose animal is there. Animal, if you take animal is parent class. So all the animals inherits the properties of which one? Animal. So there is a type of dog is animal, cat is animal, so cow is a animal, right? So dog, cat, and one more is what? Cow. So dog is an animal, cat is an animal, cow is also animal. So what is a relation here? Is a relation. It means dog inherits all the properties of which one? Animal. It means this animal is called as which class here? Parent class. It is also called a super class. It is also called a base class. So dog is a type of animal, cat is a type of animal, cow is a type of animal. Now these are called which classes? Child classes. Child class, or it is called subclass. Child class or subclass, or it is called derived class. Because derived class is having all the properties of animal, and derived class also have its own properties. Derived class also have its own properties, right? So actually this parent class is called as generalized class. This parent class is called which class? Generalized. Generalized means which is developed based on commonality. See, dog, cat, cow, all these are having some common properties. So you'll be writing those common properties how many times? Only one time. And you are using that properties how many times? Number of times. So generalized means which is developed based on commonality. So animal is having common properties of all the animal. So animal is a base class which is used for developing which one? Animals. Animal is used to develop which one? Animals. Whenever you want to develop animal, just inherit animal and develop it. So this relation is what here? Is a relation. For example, so student is a generalized. Student is a generalized. every student, every student is having some properties like roll number and name. But there are different types of students in my application. There are different types of students in my application. So there is a student called which one? MCA student. And there is one more student who's called as which one? MBA student. So there are two types of students here. One is, okay, there are two types of students here. One is MCA student And one more is what here? MBA student. So MCA student is a student. MBA student is also student. So it means MCA student is having all the properties of what? Student. MBA student also have all the properties of what? Student. So where student is called which class? Parent class, or it is called as base class. It is called as super class. Parent class or base class or super class, and this you can call it as which class? Child class or subclass. Child class or subclass, and same thing you call it as which class? Derived class. Child class, subclass, or what is that? Derived class. So what is the advantage of inheritance? Advantage of inheritance is reusability. Advantage of inheritance is what? Reusability. It allows to use variables and methods of one class, variables and methods of one class inside. It allows to use variables and methods of one class inside what? Another class. It allows you to use variables and methods of one class inside what here? Another class. Variables and methods of one class inside another class. Okay, so advantage of inheritance is reusability. So based on the reusability of these classes, based on the reusability of classes, based on the reusability and the organization of classes, there are different types of, so there are different types of, what is that? Inheritances. One is called as single level inheritance. The other one is called as multi-level inheritance. So there is multiple inheritance. So there is hybrid. So there is hybrid inheritance. So there is a hierarchical inheritance. So based on the reusability and the way how you are organizing, based on the reusability and the way how you are organizing, so you have a different types of inheritances like single level, multi-level, multiple, hybrid, and one more is what? Hierarchical. So different types of inheritances. So what is inheritance is a process of acquiring the properties and behavior of one class inside another class, creating a class by deriving variables and methods of what? Another class. Inheritance is a process of grouping all the classes which share the common properties and behavior. So inheritance relationship is like parent and what? Child. So where the child acquires the properties and behavior of what? Parent. It allows to build similar types of classes. So here, what is the syntax of inheriting a class? So you don't require to create object of one class inside another class. You just acquire it. But inheritance is only between related classes. So class, and this is which class name? Derived class name or child class name? This is called as derived class name, or it is called as a child class name, and followed by which name here? Parent class. So followed by which class here? Parent class. And this is having its own variables and methods. This is having its own variables and what? Methods. So class, derived class name, and followed by parent class, and having his own variables and what here? Methods. So based on the reusability of classes, you have a different types of inheritances. Suppose if there is one base class and one derived class, you can call this as which inheritance? Single level. In single level, there is only one parent and one parent class or one base class and one derived class. So this is called as which inheritance? Single level inheritance. In multi-level inheritance, there is more than one type of or more than one level of inheritance. If there is more than one level of inheritance, then it is called a multi-level inheritance. If there is more than one level of inheritance, this is called as, so this is called as what here? Multi-level. So this is grandfather, father, and then child. if the class is derived from more than one base class, now there is a class A, there is a class A, and there is a class B. Now this class A, class B, and there is a class C. If the C class is derived from A class as well as what? B class. So this you can call it as which inheritance? Multiple inheritance. This is called which inheritance? Multiple inheritance. If more than one class is derived from same base class, for example, there is a class A, it is in the form of tree structure. If two derived classes are derived from same base class, okay, one parent and two child, this you can call it as which one? Hierarchical. This is called as which one? Hierarchical inheritance. This is hierarchical inheritance. Okay, this is called as which inheritance here? Hierarchical. So if the class is derived from more than more than one, yes. So then you can call this as which inheritance? Hierarchical. If there is more than one type of inheritance, If there is more than one type of inheritance, then it is called as hybrid inheritance. If it is more than one type of inheritance, you have a multiple types of inheritances, like there's a class A, class B, and there is a class C, and there is a class D. Now, this kind of inheritance is called a hybrid inheritance. You have a multiple types. If there is a multiple types, then you call it as hybrid. So this is hierarchical, and this is multi-level, and this is multiple. So how many types are there? Multiple types are there. Then you can call this as what? Hybrid inheritance. So the way how you are organizing, based on that, it has been classified into a different types, like single level, multi-level, multiple. So the way how you are organizing it, based on the organization of classes, it has been classified into a different types: single level, multi-level, multiple, hybrid, and one more is what? Hierarchical. Okay, fine. So tomorrow we'll see how to work with this inheritance. Right? Today we'll stop it here, and tomorrow we'll continue this. Right? Thank you.